Wow.
Yeah.
All I can say is when I hear that, that's officially my favorite bass player.
Mm.
I mean, Charlie Hayden's my main influence, but Jimmy Blanton's just the man. Did you hear that? The command, the fun, the melodic, the sophistication, the whole package, a plunky, beautiful tone. He sounds better than Paul Chambers on that stuff. He sounds like he's the man. When I hear that, I want to be him.
Wow.
It's like when I hear Monk or Charlie Hayden or Ornette or Train or Burt, it immediately strikes this weird note inside my soul where it's like I want to be him. I'm gonna die trying to figure out how to play like that man.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Well, and again,
Yeah.
and a prodigy. I mean, so young to be
Right.
that.
He comes out of the gate screaming, right? Like 21 years old, already playing all that shit, and then frickin' dies. Oh my God.
It's just not right.
I know. Have mercy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you do some digging into the comments of my other hero bass players, Ray Brown, Charlie Hayden, Scott LaFerre, all those guys, they always say it in interviews. They go, well, it's Jimmy Blanton. Jimmy Blanton's the man. He's the guy who started it all. Because think about when he did Walk on that. Now this is a duo recording with Duke, so
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
very
just
exposed.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very exposed musical environment, which is great for our purposes.
Yeah.
Now think about when he walked right there. He's playing all that fantastic eighth note complexity, and then he goes, boom, 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 boom. Did you hear how clean and tasty that was? That wasn't jang, 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 like Wellman Brown, like Wellman does it. It was so buoyant and sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Well, we got more.
Can't say enough about that guy. We should do a whole show on him. And he only recorded for like a year. Holy cow!
I know. It's tempting to say let's just stop the show and listen to that whole record right now, but
Yeah, totally.
we gotta move on to another one of the big.
When I got him a hold of that Duke Ellington box set and that Duke Ellington duo record with him, I was just starting to play the acoustic bass. I was probably 20. And I got a hold of that. What a blessing that was, because I remember all my early touring stuff, like driving across country when I was 21. I would put Duke Ellington records on with Jimmy Blanton nonstop, just driving around listening to Jimmy Blanton and Willie Dixon. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So now comes another big name, Oscar Pettiford.
Yes, Pettiford.
Pettiford.
Yeah, man.
And
so this would be the fountainhead, I think, of modern bebop bass playing. He's foundation. He's on all the records, and he's doing Blanton's eighth notes, but he's now setting it up for Bird's guys.
Now, Pettiford was 3/4 Native American. His mother was a full Choctaw, and father was half Cherokee and half African American. And he started on piano and switched to the bass. And he said that he didn't like the way people were playing bass, so he kind of developed his own way of playing it.
He seems to be on a separate stream with Jimmy Blanton with the eighth note thing. Maybe it's because of his piano playing. So maybe he's trying to adapt the more harmonically sophisticated stuff that he was able to do on piano. He's adapting that to bass, and he's thinking the bass players are playing too simple. They should be able to play more chromatic substitutions like they do on piano.
And we've got another kind of a prodigy here because he first was heard by Milt Hinton at the age of 14, and Milt was encouraging from what he heard from this kid, but then he gave up bass for a short time because he just didn't think he could make a living at it. And it said a few months later he ran into Hinton once again, and Hinton persuaded him to return to the music. So
How clutch was that? Right. Yeah, totally.
So there's Hinton again, right in the middle of everything,
So in my studies of Oscar Pettiford, it was a very musical family. Like his brothers and sisters all played very well, and they had like a family band. And they had to talk him out of out of leaving his family band and moving to New York and all that.
Wow.
And another thing from what I understand about him is that he had a personality disorder, and he was very quick to be angry, very quick to get into serious like physical fights, and he had to be like kind of chaperoned by the other guys in the band. They like wouldn't let him out of the cab and stuff. Like make sure he gets to the gig because he's just gonna jump out and start attacking somebody because he was like a kind of violent hothead of a man, you know.
Wow.
And there's stories in the canon of I forget one of the best musicians like Stan Getz or somebody like that, you know, like a white guy, and Oscar Pettiford just wailing on him, "You white motherfucker, you know, stealing our fucking music, I'm gonna kill you," you know, one of those kind of guys. You're like, holy shit.
Jeez.
I know, right? Kind of, it you don't hear it in his music. His music is gentle and wonderful. I think we're gonna play an epically famous bass solo. If you're an acoustic bass player and you're into jazz and you want to study to be a good accomplished jazz acoustic bass player, there's a few solos that are just absolutely foundation. And the man I love, Coleman Hawkins, this is one of those bass solos. You can really hear him breathing while he plays. He plays a line. You really like hear him taking breaths.
Oh, yeah.
Between. So it's a good. It's a good teaching solo because you can teach a young person who wants to play all this crap and doesn't know how to leave any space, and the ideas don't sound very formed or sentence-like. You put that solo on for him and you go, see, listen to this guy breathe in between the lines. Why don't you try that for yourself a little bit, you know? And then there's another seminal recording. There's a trio record, one of my favorites, Sonny Rollins' The Freedom Suite. And that's with Oscar Pettiford and Max Roach. That's a great, great record.
Well, he played with everybody. Coleman Hawkins, Earl Hines, Ben Webster. He was at Minton's Playhouse jamming with everybody.
Right.
Thelonious Monk and Dizzy Gillespie and Kenny Clark.
So he's foundation for the bebop movement.
Yeah. And also, you know, worked with Duke Ellington and Woody Herman and did the big band stuff too.
Was he the next bass player after Blanton, or was there one guy in between?
I think he replaced Blanton. I'm not sure. I know somewhere in the
so
notes.
Too.
Yeah. And then and another little funny note about him is he kind of discovered Cannonball Adderley. They said that one time his musicians kind of going to play a kind of a gag on him, and this local unknown music teacher wanted to sit in. So, okay,
right.
And they put a really, okay, you want to sit in? Here's a tough piece. Let's see if you can get through this. And then he kicked ass.
Right.
And they're like, oh, wow.
Well, again, so Pettiford is like a kind of grumpy, tough dude, you know? And, we're going to have some untested guy coming onto my bandstand. Oh, really? You know what I mean? So that's a scary test right there, you know? Maybe you're going to get your ass kicked by this grumpy guy. But then Cannonball kicked ass on it, and so he was in the club right there.
There you go. The rest is history there. And another interesting note about him, back to, again, the development of these guys playing violin and cello and things, is at a certain point he broke his arm, and I didn't look into how he broke his arm, but we might take a few
over somebody's
guesses.
head or something. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So he had trouble playing the bass, and so he used the cello, and the cello then became kind of an important part of his repertoire. You know, he played bass and kept experimenting with cello after he was kind of forced to use it for this injury. And
Percy Heath did that too. They tuned it in fourths.
Yeah, and just a little note about that: the cello is tuned in fifths. It's kind of the
like
reverse.
The violin or the mandolin, yeah.
And just like the mandolin, you know, mandocello, all those instruments are in fifths, and then the bass and the guitar are in fourths. It's kind of flipped upside down. And so he moved the tuning to similar to the bass tuning in fourths. And it said that, he did a lot of that. And then he ended up settling in Denmark toward the end of his career and recording with a lot of European artists and other Americans who had settled in Europe, like Bud Powell and Kenny Clark. But then he died a couple of years later from a virus related to polio.
What the hell? At 38.
Another young guy before 40, but left quite quite a mark before he.
So he's on these foundation. He's on the founding fathers of bebop, and that's what he is. That's his place in history. But if you listen to his last records, it's very still big band era music, and the arrangements are killer. You think it's going to be like a bass player record with lots of fancy bass playing on it? No, man. I think it's like, I don't know. I'm not sure if he did the arrangements, but it's a writer's record for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, very good.
All right, let's hear this famous recording, "The Man I Love" with Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah, man.